Looky what we have here.
Welcome, guys, to part 6 of What If Daryl Died Instead of Merle. In the last episode, we covered Abraham and Rosita and Eugene talking to Merle and everybody in Woodbury, and Merle rejecting them out of wanting to build a better future at Woodbury instead of wanting to go to Washington over something that seems too good to be true. Abraham reacts as you would expect, but not before they leave. Andrea and Michonne give them some weapons that Michonne's crafted as the new blacksmith to help them on their travels so they don't get freaking killed. And with that, they take their leave, and that's where we resume. So, Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene have just begun to leave Woodbury and go on the trip alone, which is a fine diversion from every one of my stories, where at this point, if the characters were still at Woodbury, I literally just had them go with the three of them and the story would continue. But now we are on a very different route with Merle as the headway. But wait a second. You said that Michonne was the new blacksmith, right? Because Merle and Andrew got together. You said that this episode we would get to see what weapons and what would happen with them going forward. Like what all happened, right? Well, what is it? Well, here we go. Abraham gets a medieval crafted sort of sledgehammer, which would be very freaking sick for Abraham, and Rosita would get a medieval crafted spiked bat, something of which Rosita, it would fit with her. Eugene, he would not get any weapons, obviously. I really don't need to mention why. He clumsily used guns around this point. He was a coward, blah, 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 standard season 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Eugene, pretty much. It wasn't even until the end that he really evolved to, like, the absolute maximum of his character. Not gonna lie. Anyways, yeah, those are the weapons, and so. Anyway, once they leave, Michonne doubts that even with these weapons, that they're going to have any kind of chance with going to Washington, and maybe they should have either, like, told them to forcibly stay here, even if it was slightly against their will, or they should have just went with them. And Andrea agrees with this, but she also agrees with Merle, her being together with him, and his leadership so far in the restoration of Woodbury, and a better leader than the governor was, and a far cry from his original character development. It hasn't led them astray so far, and he did good, especially by Daryl's part, so it's much better to build upon what they have here rather than go for something that's half-baked. And Rick would touch upon this further too, saying that Merle's far cry from season 1 would have led them astray from what they were trying to strive for a long time ago. And he obviously wouldn't say season 1, but he would just say his original self. You know what I'm saying? It would have led them astray if they chose him as the leader back then, whenever he had them on that roof. But he agrees that Merle has done right by everybody, and Merle wouldn't say anything in this discussion because he already made his point known. As for Woodbury, it would continue to thrive, and like I said at the end of the last episode, they pretty much just go on unabated after everyone leaves, especially after Abraham gives everyone that smug remark. Meanwhile, Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene are driving their truck, and they're riding along to Washington, but shortly after they leave, a distance away from Woodbury, their tires are shot, and the car goes screeching and skidding across the road and into the grass and into a couple trees, and it crashes. But who did this? Who could have possibly seen this happening or done anything about it? Well, this is the introduction to the Claimers. It's funny because in the last story with Dale, I actually had Abraham and them stopping the claimers and catching them off guard. But now it's the claimers catching them off guard. Yep, this is where we get into them. And the next few episodes are going to be about Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene mainly. And everything like that. So strap yourselves in. Abraham just smiles at this and says he doesn't even care that their ride was just botched or that these guys just tried to kill him and skid him off the road. He says he doesn't even care, and it actually makes him happy, and the claimers are very, they don't understand this at all, but Abraham then elaborates, saying that now he can let his anger out. And after he promptly says this, Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene, very clumsily once again, arm themselves with the weapons that they were given to by Michonne, along with their own standard guns and weapons, obviously, and promptly wipe out the claimers without pretty much any difficulty. More Abraham and Rosita, but you get what I'm saying. Eugene still hit a couple walkers when he clumsily shot the gun, so I wouldn't put him past him to at least fatally wound a claimer and help out. Joe manages to survive and tries to mount a surprise attack behind one of the vehicles or something, but he promptly gets his head smashed in by Abraham's medieval sledgehammer. They're medieval because it's a blacksmith, it's Michonne. It fits for the tone of her character and what they're going for. And once they think that the threat of the claimers is over and they can try and find another vehicle or do something, they are promptly proven wrong with an arrow seemingly coming out of nowhere and hitting Eugene without pretty much anyone noticing at first. Now, it does hit him in the side of the chest, like basically right near the shoulder, but still the side of the chest. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost fatal. It is very, near fatal. And it's Len. Oh, wow. Who would have seen this coming? It's not like I've made Len a freaking major character who's killed Beth in my What If Rick Exiled Shane and done this, that, and the other thing. No, I've never done that before. But anyways, aside from me reusing that little kind of detail, Rosita afterwards uses her medieval spike bat and in a very season 10-11 fashion kills Len like a very Rosita way. But afterwards, Abraham snaps her out of this little moment that they just killed this group, because that's not what they should be worried about. Even though he is pretty proud that they just stopped these people, that's not what they should be worried about. Eugene could be very near dying. They don't know if that wound's fatal. And they gotta find somewhere where they can patch him up and make sure he's okay and rest themselves and find a vehicle. And soon enough, they do. Without too much wandering, they manage to find a familiar looking funeral home, familiar to us, and Abraham and Rosita there try to rest themselves and check on Eugene, who says at this point, with what they've endured and everything, literally not even a day after leaving Woodbury, mind you, they were already attacked, lost a vehicle, and now he almost just died. They need to just leave him or go back to Woodbury and get their help, because they ain't gonna get to Washington like this. It should be that dead obvious. Abraham says, nah. Those people at Woodbury made their own choice. They could have very well went with them to Washington, but no, they decided to leave them and just give him a few weapons, and that still led to Eugene getting almost fatally wounded. Sure, they're alive, and Abraham agrees with what Eugene's saying, but they ain't turning back, and they're not asking for help from people who didn't want to help them or save the world. And Abraham leaves this as is, and then Abraham and Rosita hear a sound in the funeral home. They whirl around with guns in every room to try and make sure that they're not being pursued by another member of that group that they just killed or someone else. And when they go out to check on Eugene after checking all the rooms and seeing nobody, Eugene isn't there. And they hear skidding car skidding outside, and they rush outside to see a car with a cross booking it down the road. And Eugene being gone, that confirms that he was kidnapped, because they didn't see the car here before, so Eugene couldn't have known about this. Rosita deduces that, saying this exactly, Eugene was most likely just kidnapped. They either need to go after him or go back to Woodbury and get help, because now, more than ever, they could use the help. Abraham just looks at her dead in the eyes with a menacing look. And he reiterates very sternly, those people chose this for themselves. Going back is not an option. And we all know how stuck up Abraham was about going back. And says that they're going and they're going to do this their way. Because if those people back at that town really wanted to help, they would have been here by now. Or at least before they were attacked by that other group. They're doing this alone. And Rosita, she can't say that she didn't expect this from Abraham, because I mean, like, come on. So she just casually smiles in a very Rosita-like way and says, well, can't say I didn't expect this. And they get their weapons, get some supplies, get some stuff to stock on, and maybe find a vehicle. I really don't think that there was a vehicle there, because I mean, it was a funeral home. Who the frick knows? But anyway, they go on the road to pursue the vehicle, but instead, what they find is a man with a hat outside of a cabin, just tending to whatever stuff he was tending to, and just seemingly just on watch for something. And then Rosita sees something else in the distance. Seems like a big building or something. Abraham takes a look too. Not very interested, because he wants to find Eugene and this vehicle, but seeing this and whatever else piques his interest slightly. Turns out, they've just entered Terminus territory. How will the story go from here, now that the future of the, pretty much, for now, seems to revolve around Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene? Since we know that Eugene was kidnapped by the hospital, will they ever find him? Will Eugene actually want to stay there and confess to them at the hospital? Will that turn the story into 300 angles of differences? And how will Abraham and Rosita handle the Terminus people? Find out next time.
Hope you enjoyed the show, assholes!
I like you and your big old massive lady nuts. Name's Negan.